So it's another warm welcome to Chrissie, to our Mayfair office at the British Business Podcast. Absolutely delighted to have Chrissie, a founder, solicitor, and content provider and creator extraordinaire. And I think we're in for a treat this afternoon in terms of getting some insights into your background. So if you wouldn't mind, Chrissie, welcome. I wouldn't mind if you give us a bit of an insight into your background and how you got to where you are today.
Sure, well, thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be in these very beautiful surroundings. I come down to London every so often, but I'm mainly based in Birmingham or over in Dubai. So I'll tell you a little bit about that in a minute. It's quite a long, interesting, hopefully convoluted, definitely, story as to how I got to where I am now. So I think I'll probably start at the beginning and talk you through it from the very start. So my dad's American and my mum's English, and we were sort of moving between the UK and the US when I was very young. So my mum actually decided to home educate me instead of putting me into a school because she was kind of concerned that all the disruption and pulling me in and out of schools, enrolling me in different places, making different friends, it might cause quite a lot of disruption and chaos. So she decided, she was a former university lecturer, so she decided she was going to teach me herself at home. So I was home educated. This is just outside of London where I grew up, actually, not far from here. And I was home educated until pretty much I was a teenager. And then she decided that the sensible thing to do would be to send me to school for my GCSEs and A-levels because it gets pretty technical at that stage. And she wanted to make sure that, I had the proper teaching to get through those very, very critical exams. So I went to school at that point in my life, which was quite an experience, I'll be honest. Joining school so late in life actually was something, which is very difficult to explain to someone who's been to school since they were 4 years old and worked through the process. But, there are many, many different things to consider. I mean, teaching style was one of them. It just been my mum and I, and we were very practical learners. My mum would kind of take me out in the garden and we'd count things. And, I learnt French by watching French films, and to suddenly go into a classroom, we had to kind of learn out of books and off a whiteboard, and there's 30 other kids around me who I've never had kids like this around me, and lots of distractions, and of course all the social consequences that go with that, cliques, and trying to figure all of that out. So that was a pretty interesting part of my life, kind of going through that process. And I actually did okay in my GCSEs. My mum, bless her, had taught me actually pretty much everything I needed to know for that, and they weren't too bad. However, when it got to A-level, didn't do so brilliantly at A-level, decided to embark on 4 of the hardest A-levels, biology, chemistry, physics and maths. So I was a bit of a destined for a tough time there, actually. But that teaching style, I really struggled to learn the materials in the school environment because it was just a very alien environment to me, and I really didn't learn very well. So I really screwed them up, in all honesty. My A-levels were not the best performance of my life. And I had ideals of going on and becoming a vet. We had lots of animals at home when I was a kid, and we went to the zoo a lot and just had this really strong bond with animals, really wanted to be a vet. But obviously, I didn't get the A-levels. You have to have extremely strong A-levels to be a vet. It's very, very competitive. So decided I was going to do a backup choice, which was animal biology at university, and then perhaps I could change and do veterinary later on. But didn't get, unfortunately, the A-levels to do that either. So I had 2 choices, really. I either had to retake my A-levels and try and do better, or I had to think of a different option. What was I going to do next? And I really had my heart set on doing this animal biology course at Birmingham. Lovely campus, just fell in love with it. I was like, I'm going to go to this university. Called admissions. They said, absolutely not. There is nothing at this university for you with those A-levels. We're really sorry. They were really poor, by the way. Very, very poor. Wow. And I just wouldn't have that. I said, right, okay, well, there must be something you can do. I spoke to lots and lots of different people, rang up every department and said, look, this is a situation. This is what I want to do. And eventually I found someone who took pity on me in the science department. They said, well, we don't actually have any degree courses that you can do, but we have this foundation year, which is kind of like an access course, which basically if you get through this, you can then access one of our degree courses.
Okay. And
for me, I really didn't want to retake my A-levels. I couldn't see the situation improving. I was a really bad exam taker. I hated the learning, so I just wanted to be done with school and that environment. So I thought, I think this is the best option for me to kind of change environment and do something a bit different. So, but the only course I had a foundation in was chemistry, and I hated chemistry. It was awful. I really hoped they were going to say biology, which is what I wanted to do. But no deal. So I did my foundation course, and they also added the nice little caveat that I had to get a first in that course if I wanted to access my original undergraduate degree, which was the animal biology degree. And I thought, I'm on freshers, everybody's in halls just having the time of their life because first year doesn't normally count. Here I am trying to get first in chemistry. Anyway, long story short, I got my first in chemistry and then managed to get on to my original course. So happy days, ended up having to do 4 years at uni instead of 3, but came out with a 2-1 animal biology. Great. Decided at that point I didn't really want to go on and do another 4 years at vet school, which is what it was going to be. Had no idea what career I wanted to do. I'd always had my heart set on being a vet. Really then was completely stuck, didn't know what to do. Went to my careers advisor. And my careers advisor got his pie chart out and said, okay, these are the sorts of careers people go into.
A pie chart?
Literally a pie chart with all of these different career options. Said, okay, this is what people do with a biology degree. X% go into this, X% go into this. First 2 most popular were teaching and research. Not interested in either of those really. Just labs, classrooms, not my thing. And the third most common thing that people go into, I think it was a general science degree, was law, which to me is something that I'd never thought about before. I had never thought about going into law because I sort of had this vision of lawyers, big stuffy offices surrounded by files, wearing suits every day, contracts, not, I wanted to go and be a large animal vet on a farm. This was not what I thought of.
Polar opposites, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Polar opposite of what I wanted to do. But my careers advisor, who I was actually quite friendly with because he'd kind of been with me throughout this whole, process, this saga of my university degree. And he said, look, I actually think you'd quite like it. And he talked about his friend who was an injury lawyer, a medical lawyer. And he said, look, this is actually what you do. You should look into this because it's not all contracts. It's not all suits and corporates. Like, this is medical. Like, you're in hospitals. You're dealing with people who are injured. You're reading medical records, And I thought, okay, I'd never really thought of there being any other type of law other than contract and corporate law. That's what I thought of as law. Yeah. I sort of missed this whole point that pretty much everything has a law that goes with it, whether it's media, fashion, beauty, everything's got a law that goes with it. And this medical idea really appealed to me. I started looking into it and was like, yeah, this is great. This is what I'm going to do. Thought, I've got my 2-1 now. All my A-levels are behind me. Great. Let's go in and do this. And then I realised that actually going into law is incredibly competitive, and actually they do look at your A-levels as a kind of sift criteria. Oh, wow. And a lot of firms, in order to secure what's called a training contract, which is basically you have to get a firm to sponsor you for 2 years as basically like an apprenticeship before you qualify as a lawyer. So you have to get this firm to sponsor you, which is incredibly competitive. And they look at both your A-levels and your degree in order to take people on. So I was hit with another wall, basically like, great, here I am back to this, it feels like it's, 5 years ago. And but I didn't have any connections in law really. My dad knew a couple of lawyers who I asked for work experience, and they politely said no because your A-levels aren't good enough. Go and your CV isn't cut out for this basically. I said okay, fine. I think I probably should have retreated at that point, but I was a little bit rebellious, and I think that actually made me want to do it more. I was like, who are you to tell me I can't do this? I can do this because I've got rubbish A-levels. I mean, anything, I can do this. So I kind of went a bit of a convoluted way, as always, did lots of different types of work experience, sent off loads and loads of letters to tiny law firms, businesses, anything that had like a vaguely legal department. Thought, right, I'm going to find someone who kind of gives me a chance. And I finally got a judge at the local Crown Court who obviously took pity on my situation, said, yes, you can come shadow me for a week. And during that week, he introduced me to all of these different lawyers, barristers, and obviously he had quite a lot of clout as a judge, and he kind of went, you need to give this girl some work experience next week. And they said, okay, fine. So I managed to get kind of a whole summer's worth of work experience off the back of this one placement. And that really, really helped actually to get my foot in the door, because what I kind of lacked in academics, I made up for really in kind of transferable skills from other employment that I'd done, and also having now this kind of vast array of work experience, which I didn't have before.
And tenacity.
Hopefully. Is that coming through?
Yeah, big time.
So I did eventually manage to secure a training contract. There's sort of various other facets to it, but I'm not going to go into all of those. We haven't got all day. And I did manage to secure a training contract with a top 20 law firm by, against all the odds, with a firm called Owen Mitchell. And I started my training contract in 2013, and I qualified as a lawyer in 2015 into a department called International Serious Injury, which is basically where people are seriously injured but abroad. There's some sort of cross-border element, effectively, to the claim. It involves different jurisdictions. So that's where I qualified, and I stayed there until around this time last year, actually. And in between those two things, I felt really passionately about wanting to explain to others and kind of show that I'd managed to do this kind of despite, because I know most of people who would have been given those A levels and gone through the process would have said, I'm never going to become a lawyer with those A levels. It's not going to happen. And actually, I felt passionately about wanting to kind of tell my story and say, okay, this isn't straightforward by any means, but actually it can be done. And then I went on to be very successful in my legal career and, won several awards and have set precedent law in various cases. And I kind of really wanted to emphasise the fact that actually I had the worst A levels in the world and I shouldn't have got through the process. And actually I did and really excelled in the process. And I sort of wanted to put that on a platform to really hopefully give others some inspiration to keep trying and kind of show that the system doesn't always work, actually, because I shouldn't really be here, by all accounts.
Yep.
So I set up basically a YouTube channel telling my story because I wanted to reach people who perhaps weren't studying in big universities and didn't have the resources to access those things.
So was it an actual goal objective for you to set up that YouTube channel to say to people, guys, anybody can do this if you've got the desire, the drive, the purpose to want to do it? Is that what your goal was, to go out there to tell your story?
I think the goal was really to reach anybody who felt that they were at a disadvantage, anybody who really wanted to be a lawyer and felt like they were never going to be a lawyer because the process wasn't going to allow for it. So I really wanted to set up a channel to say, okay, this is how I did it. And also share some of my knowledge because I was fortunate enough to go to a very good, when I did my law conversion course at University of Law, then College of Law, which was a good university. And I wanted to make the law more accessible because, again, it was a very elitist. Only certain people were getting through with certain A levels, with certain backgrounds. And I kind of felt passionate that, but actually, I don't think these are going to be the best lawyers. I actually want, personally, I want people to come through the process who've had different life experiences, who've had struggles. And actually, the process doesn't allow for that. So I really wanted to reach kind of a different generation, really, of people and say, look, I know you don't think you're cut out for law because the process doesn't allow for you, but here's how I did it. And, here are some tips to help you get through the process in the same way. So I interviewed loads of different people as well on YouTube who had different stories. I put out as much information as I could about things that I was learning during my journey and, broke down legal news stories and said, this is how you need to attack application forms and interviews, etc. So put out a load of kind of career support resources, really. And actually, it was very slow going at the beginning. When I first started looking at setting up a YouTube channel, there was nothing legal on YouTube other than kind of commercial legal type stuff. But really, law firms, lawyers, kind of just doing YouTube videos and just sitting there talking about things. Nothing like that. And I thought, okay, this is obviously a market that doesn't exist. Anyway, so I said, I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to do it for a year. I'm going to do it for a year religiously because I know this is a market that I have to create from nowhere. So
what date was that from?
So that was September the 1st, 2017. I launched my YouTube channel and it was very slow going. I mean, it had a handful of views, which I'm sure were all family members of mine watching it and no one else.
10 times.
So I set it up and actually it was very slow going for about 4 or 5 months, and then a legal publication stumbled upon it and ran a feature on it basically, and virtually overnight I picked up hundreds and hundreds of subscribers, which was brilliant.
Wow.
And then it kind of spiraled from there, and then I branched out into other social media channels, into events, into coaching, etc. And I think now we're at just that sort of entity which has kind of been many facets of what I call law and broader, because that was what the channel was called. Because I also did little bits of like my life, and this is what life as a lawyer is like. So it wasn't all just advice. It wasn't all educational stuff. It was also, this is what my life looks like as a junior lawyer.
At this point, the viewers and listeners out there will want to know how to access you. You just said a brand name there. You've just said a thing. Can you explain that a little bit and then come back to the story, because I'm holding my breath? Because it's important that they get that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So it started off as a YouTube channel called Law and Broader, which still exists. I'm now on LinkedIn as just my name, Chrissie Wolfe, and Instagram and Twitter at Chrissie Wolfe, and also TikTok now at the TikTok Lawyer. So those are the main places where you can find me. And we're at just over 85, 90,000 in the family now across platforms. So so you can see that it spiraled from there, really. And that sort of turned into, its own entity, really. I never intended for that to ever be a business. It was just, I was a lawyer and I was working crazy hours and I was like, that's my job. This is just like a bit of something to give back, a little bit extra that I feel passionately about. Yeah. I never in a million years thought that would ever turn into a business, because social media wasn't really... it hadn't taken off, not for lawyers especially. No. It hadn't taken off then. It never crossed my mind. I'd love to say that it did and it was all part of some grand plan, but it honestly was. I thought, I'm going to do this at the weekend. It gives me some joy. Sure. If it helps a few people, great. Never ever expected it to be what it is now, which is obviously, a good income stream for me. Doing, creating content for different businesses, doing brand deals, public speaking, workshops. It's podcasts, exactly. Never envisaged that in a million years, and that kind of grew and grew and grew whilst I was running it alongside my career as a solicitor, which was obviously quite demanding, doing those sorts of hours. And I had been kind of thinking about making the break, but I didn't want to do LAB full time. I loved it, but I didn't want to make it my full-time job. I've always been someone who likes to do lots of different things. I don't like to do one thing. Sure. And I thought I don't want any of these things to kind of be my whole working life. So
pigeonhole. Yeah,
exactly. I think the catalyst really was lockdown, actually. So the catalyst went into lockdown, and I did the first kind of, I think we were from March 2020 we were in lockdown, and by sort of September there'd been some sort of progress. We were coming out, and then we went back into lockdown, and I thought, I just don't think I can do a winter in lockdown. I was still working for Mitchell at the time, and I had a really good relationship with my boss, and I said, look, do I really need to be here? We've had the memo, the office is closed, the court is closed, because I was a litigator. So I could do everything online. Do I really need to be in Birmingham? And he said, no, if you need to get away for a bit, get away. And I thought I might be away for a month or something just to clear my head. And long story short, I came back about 2 weeks ago. So I went to Dubai. Because I wanted to be somewhere warmer. I wanted to be somewhere that was open, not in lockdown, and that ruled out all of Europe. Yeah. And somewhere where there wasn't too big a time difference, because I was still working, albeit, actually no one could know really that I was there, to be honest. I was just working as if I was, in the office. Moved to Dubai, and at that point, I really kind of upped the ante on LAB, did lots of online content, and through that, I got lots of inquiries for kind of odd bits of work here and there. I thought, I can't really take these on because I work for a big law firm. I can't just be taking on odd contracts here and there. And that was sort of the catalyst, saying that actually, but these odd bits of work, they look really good and they're well-paid work, and these are people that I want to work with. And maybe this is kind of the catalyst to say, actually, basically this is consultancy, really, what I'm being asked for here. And actually, I think it's time to do something a bit different that allows me a bit more flexibility. I've done my almost 10 years in private practice. Yep. So I decided to move into the consultancy space. I handed in my notice almost a year ago today, actually, or left almost a year ago today. And I've been consulting ever since, mainly for different types of legal business. Who are looking to go through kind of cultural or digital transformational change, because one of the elements that I was quite big on, which kind of LAB grew to talk about, was data and digital and tech, and how the legal profession was moving more towards a kind of data-led and technologically advanced profession. And a lot of people had picked up on my writing and the content I put out there and asked me to consult for their business on that side of things. So complete pivot from personal injury into almost technology and data and digital and culture as well.
And working for somebody and working for yourself.
Yeah, and being self-employed. It's been a journey. So I'm sort of running those two things alongside each other. So I'm consulting for legal businesses in various different aspects of their business rather than practice, although I am still on the roll and I can still pick up practice if I want to. Actually, most of my consultancy work has come through business opportunities rather than practice opportunities. And I'm sort of running that alongside Law and Broader and everything that comes with that, which is a lot of travelling and doing things like this and speaking and workshops and a lot of things. So
when did you come back from Dubai?
I have been back and forth a couple of times. So this most recent time I came back just before Easter. I came back. I have been back a couple of times since, but it was a very welcome escape from lockdown. I'll be honest, things were, much more open. I think, obviously lockdown was incredibly difficult for everybody, but I was on my own during that period, and I'm not really a person who likes to be on their own. I go out, I socialise a lot, and I found it incredibly difficult just being on my own all the time, the same four walls. So for me, I needed to be around people, and actually I was fortunate that I had a good relationship with my boss who said, okay, I get that, this just is not going to work for you, this lockdown situation. So he was happy for me to go somewhere as long as I could continue to do my hours. And then I think he knew possibly that where that might lead, but and here we are, totally leading a totally different life.
I know our listeners and viewers out there are fascinated in people's stories. I think one of the things that they'd be really interested to get in a deep dive with you is sort of the ability of your brain to sort of recognize the opportunities, because you've created your own opportunity, really. You had that safety net of a business where you had a job. And one of the questions that comes out from our readers, our listeners all the time, is that they look for a safety net. And actually, when we talk to a lot of business owners and controllers, they talk about making that first step. And actually, there is no safety net, but the moment they take the step, the safety net appears. Can you try, and it might be difficult, but if you could try to sort of give that insight into your challenges that you had to go from working for somebody else. Obviously, you created this amazing brand that's got a lot of people who want to know about you and are following you. But that bit, the going from being employed to self-employed, I think that's one of the things mostly that our listeners will be excited about.
Yeah, it's a difficult transition, absolutely. And it was one that I probably thought about for too long, in all honesty.
Really?
I think I thought about it. I mean, as soon as sort of LAB started, doing well and getting traction, and I was like, I think, I think I want to work for myself. I'm not sure I can kind of be in this employee environment any longer. And that process went on for several years, but I didn't really know what the next thing was. Exactly what you're saying. You kind of want the next safe thing to appear before you jump from the nice, comfy, warm thing that you're in right now. And that never really happened. And I think it kind of got to a point, exactly what you're saying, where during lockdown I moved over there and there was talk of going back to the office whilst I was still in Dubai, and it was kind of at the point where I thought I cannot do that. But I kind of got to that point actually where I thought I don't think I can do this anymore. I'm not really sure what the next thing is. And actually, like you said, when you force yourself into that position, that's when the net appears. Although I spoke just now about kind of having these inquiries for work, I didn't really acknowledge them. I just thought, I can't do that. I work for, I work for a law firm. I can't possibly pick up all this other work, and didn't even really process it until I handed in my notice.
So it was like automatic that you just dismissed it?
Yeah, pretty much. I said, I just referred to other people. Luckily I had a big network on, LinkedIn and various other platforms. So if someone said, can you do this? I said, no, I can't, but my friend can. This was just the process that I had, almost like a kind of referral thing. And then, as soon as I handed in my notice, I didn't really know what else to do. I thought, actually, maybe I can do something. I actually went through my LinkedIn inbox. And I mentioned to a couple of people who had kind of been my mentors through this whole through the whole process for a long time. And I said, I've done it. And actually both of them said, right, we need you to do this for, I've been waiting for you to do this for however long.
So those mentors actually wanted you to do work for them?
Yeah. So on a consultancy basis. I am working for one of them right now. My main client, a client called Digital Legal Exchange, actually, who is run by a chap called Mark Cohen over in the US, who had been one of my long-term mentors. He writes the legal column in Forbes. And which is fantastic.
Wow.
Bizarre side story, but yes, I reached out to him on LinkedIn many years before, just after I started LAB, because one of his articles coincided with something that I had just done a video on. I said, I've just done a video about the tech revolution in law, picked up some of the same themes. And he watched it. He's like, this is incredible. You've said at, this junior stage exactly what I've written in my Forbes article. It's like, we need to connect. And that kind of, he was my mentor from then on. And then as soon as I handed in my notice, he kind of said, right, you're coming over to the exchange, you're doing this, this and this, which is brilliant. And he's just a really wonderful, inspiring guy. And the opportunity to work with him, of course, was incredible. But exactly what you're saying, you have to jump for the net to appear, which is that really difficult step. And I was really lucky because I did have a big network, and there was a part of me that thought, I think if I've really got onto the breadline here, there's probably enough people in my network that I could reach out to. And that is one of the, in every single, whenever anyone asks me for a top tip, build your network of people, because there will be things in there that you can find, people to help you, work that you can pick up within your network. And I was fortunate that I had kind of diversity in terms of income streams as well. So I had various things in various different pots, particularly with LAB, which was great. I could do some public speaking, I could do some brand deals, I could pick up things to kind of tide me over in the short term, which kind of gave me a mini net, but it wasn't one that I particularly wanted to kind of use for a long time. And then, all of this other, the net appeared exactly like you said, with various people saying, oh, you're not IM anymore. Oh, can you do this? Can you do this? Can you do this? And I thought, oh, wow, because people just never asked before. And that, it's amazing, really, when you need to, things just appear. So it is a really difficult step to take, especially without that next step. But, anyone who's thinking about doing it, I would absolutely say make the move, build your network as much as you possibly can. Make sure you kind of diversify your income streams if you can as well, to give you a little bit of a cushion if you need that. There's many, many different ways to do that. We could do a whole separate podcast on how I've done that in various different remits to kind of keep me going. And I think, again, that's probably a separate podcast on the probably sort of millennial Gen Z attitude towards employment and kind of income structure. But yeah, mine is very much along those lines, which is don't have one thing, do many, many, many things. And then you're always, in the same way that you would say with assets, divide them up between, property and, I'm the same with, jobs, really. I'm like, have some that are long-term, more secure, have some, maybe they're a bit more higher paid, but they're shorter term, and that's kind of how I am really with how I do my work, is I sort of try and diversify that, because when you're self-employed, the main thing is you've got to go out and find your own work, which you don't have to when you're nicely employed at a law firm. You pretty much get the work comes to the firm and it's delegated to you. So you don't really have to worry about that. But when you become self-employed, if you don't go out and get that work, you have no work.
You don't eat.
No, exactly, which is probably the biggest stress. There's a number of different stresses about suddenly going from being employed to being self-employed. Tax and all these weird and wonderful things that you don't have to worry about and neatly taken care of by your HR department when you're employed. And suddenly you are all of the departments,
In one.
You're the C-suite, your HR, your admin, your accounts. And, those are jobs I've never done before, in my nice job before. So a lot to take in. But, if it's something you want to do it. You will figure it out, because you have to figure it out. You haven't got a choice. And sometimes you need to put yourself in that position, because when you've got that safety net of your job, you'll never really figure it out, because you're not being forced to. You have to force yourself sometimes to figure it out for it to happen.
I'm very interested, and I know that our listeners and viewers will say, okay, Law and Broader. What is it? What's the content? How do I get it? All of those things, because I just know they're going to be going, where do I find it? What is it?
So primarily it's produced from YouTube and Instagram, and kind of repurposed across other platforms. That's primarily where I aim my careers type content. I suppose where I aim my more consultancy type content is LinkedIn. If you're a business and you're interested in hearing my thoughts on that side of things, probably LinkedIn is the place for that. If you're an aspiring lawyer, or some aspiring lawyers, or your children are aspiring lawyers, then probably aim them for YouTube or Instagram. Is probably where the spread is.
So you mentioned that you're a content creator. Does a lot of content go out through Law and Broader?
Yeah, a lot of content. I'm on Instagram pretty much every day, TikTok pretty much every day, LinkedIn probably 2 to 3 times a week, YouTube maybe once every couple of weeks, something like that. So a lot of content comes out, and I create a lot of content for other brands as well who approach me and want to create content for them as well, either kind of through my platforms, and we have a kind of joint partnership deal, or created by me for their platforms, and then they use it on their platforms. So a lot of content being created all the time.
I know that they're going to ask, how do you monetize it? What was your thought pattern? First of all, did you know how to monetize things before you monetized it, or did you fall into it?
Absolutely not. I mean, as I said to you at the beginning, this was never really meant to be a business stream at all. It was just supposed to be something. It was basically an extension of face-to-face mentoring, and I ran out of time to face-to-face mentor people. And I thought, hey, I've got, I can use the internet here to reach, in an hour, instead of reaching one person, I can reach the whole internet, however many people want to subscribe. This is a much better use of my time to kind of do online mentoring. And I suppose I learned about monetization a little bit. I had a really good friend who I went to law school with who ended up doing something totally different, who had a very popular YouTube channel vlogging about Disney, which was her passion. And I kind of saw all these subscribers and I saw these ads and, on her YouTube, and she was really good at kind of mentoring me through it, and she kind of explained how to monetize. But again, at the beginning, that wasn't really a major focus for me because I was employed as a solicitor full time. Sure. It actually, that wasn't really a focus for me. And, I kind of, as it grew and grew and grew, I thought, probably should be doing something with this from a monetization point of view. Sure. So YouTube's got I don't know what it is at the moment, but it's got a threshold that you have to reach for subscribers, number of views. And at that point you can join their ad program, and then you can choose how you want your ads to be placed. Obviously the more ads you have, the more revenue you make. But obviously you then put people off viewing if there's too many ads. So you have to kind of hit that balance between revenue. So there's the ad revenue program. Also, you can do similar thing on TikTok. There's a creator fund, which I'm a part of on TikTok, which means I get paid per view on TikTok. And also across any of those platforms, you can be paid directly by another company to advertise their content. So you can do a collaboration if they approach you. I mean, generally I stick within my niche. I don't advertise. I get lots of people asking me to advertise things that I say no to. I say no to 90%, I'd probably say, of things I'm approached to do, because I really value my audience and I want them to be engaged. And if I start just randomly kind of slotting in bits of, just random objects, I'm gonna lose my audience, and that's my most important thing, to be honest. So I'll only really work with brands where often the ones I work with, the ones that I've reached out to and said, I really like this product or this thing that you're doing, would you like to collaborate? That's how most of the collaborations I actually ultimately do come about. And some people also approach me, but most of the people that approach me, I say, are with random things that I don't really want to do, to be honest. So that's kind of another way. And monetizing, I also do an Instagram live show, which we're on every Monday through lockdown, which I've now got a sponsor for, a bit like, how you would get sponsorship for, various different things as a sponsor. So that's another way of doing it. There's probably several other ways, but there are a few ways that you can monetize content creation, or you can kind of be employed by somebody to create their content for them if you want to.
What does the future look like for you?
Oh, good question.
Because it sounds like you're in it at the moment and loving it.
I am. I really am, actually. I mean, I've just come out of private practice where, I spent a large period of my life, and I'm actually really enjoying the flexibility that I have now. I mean, I pretty much am totally laptop based, so I can work from anywhere. I think I travelled more in lockdown than I did anything, which is bizarre because it was incredibly difficult to do. I mean, it involved a lot of forms, a lot of missed flights because I had the wrong form. But, I just had the flexibility. As long as I got my laptop, it doesn't matter, and it's so lovely to have that and be able, being freelance, which is effectively what I am with my clients. It's just so nice to be able to kind of, map out your own schedule and say, these are the hours I'm going to work. You can almost kind of say, right, what do I want to do in my life this week? I want to do all of these things. Okay, great. So that means I can fit my work around them in this. That's how I look at my week now. Instead of saying, okay, Monday to Friday is out. Nothing's happening. Yep. Okay, what do I want to do? I'm now the opposite. I look at my week, what do I want to do this week? Oh, I quite like to go and see so-and-so. I quite like to do that. Great. Okay, that means I can work the rest of these hours. And it's just a totally different mindset. And it's a blessing to be able to look at life that way, I think. I've got friends who've just had babies and young children who I can spend time with, I can travel, and it's hard to kind of imagine giving that up at the moment. But I suspect there'll be a time where I'm kind of ready for, to maybe, start a different type of business. And, I quite like to chop and change things and kind of grow with the environment and, as I kind of discover new things. So I'm sure there will be a time of change again, but at the moment I'm really just embracing the flexibility, which I just haven't had with a career in private practice law for so long.
I remember Jim Rohn, a person that I've listened to many, many hours of my life, and he said, make your vocation your vacation. And it sounds like it's exactly what you're doing, and it's incredibly, for me, listening to it, I'm excited. Goodness knows what you're like. Is there anything that we've missed, because we've coming to, I know, the end of 30 minutes? It's gone like 2 minutes. Is there anything that you've missed you'd like to add, promote? Would you like to tell our listeners any other snippets?
I mean, I would say, I think I went through a process when I was thinking about quitting and why I wanted to quit and setting up my own business, where I went through a process of sort of redefining my version of success. And I think that's a conversation everybody needs to have with themselves in terms of what success looks like. There's an objective definition of success, which is to have a snazzy title and to have a massive salary and to have the big house and X, Y, and Z. But I think if you really, sounds a bit deep now, doesn't it? But if you really want to be happy, I think you really have to decide what success looks like to you. And actually that might not be climbing the corporate ladder. It might not be chasing the massive salary and but actually it might be flexibility. It might be time with your family. It might be being able to work 20 different jobs in a week instead of one. And I had to really come to terms with that, I think, because there's this sort of theory about sunk cost fallacy. I invested so much time in being a lawyer. Could I really not be in private practice anymore? I'm doing so well. I'm at the top of my game. And actually I really kind of had to sit down and talk to myself a little bit and say, yeah, but this isn't making you happy. Why? And it's because my real definition of success didn't align necessarily with the objective definition of climbing that ladder. And
did you get any help from mentors about that? Because it sounds like you did that pretty much on your own.
Yeah, quite. From mentors, definitely. Also, actually from social media. I mean, social media absolutely is a double-edged sword. It can be a really horrible place to spend your time, but it can also be a really inspiring place to spend your time if you follow the right people. I follow a couple of really key people who are really key in that process. I think were Gary Vee, and Stephen Bartlett. Really key in kind of making me look at success in a different way and thinking about what it really looks like. Gary Vee said, that actually success isn't $1 billion, it's to wake up every day and be in a good mood. And that's so true, actually, because there are many people who have $1 billion who aren't happy. And actually, real success, it's got to be aligned with happiness. That's really what it is. If you want to, if you yourself want to be happy. So I think everybody needs to have that conversation at some point as to what success / happiness really looks like to them and go after that.
That's amazing. Well, I don't know what to say. Chrissie, it's been amazing listening to your story. What I'd like to do is thank our listeners for another fantastic podcast to Chrissie. Until next time,